Hey, Amber.
Hey, Nikki. How's it going?
Tell me something good.
All right, something good. It's Black History Month, so I have been making like a true effort to wear something that represents Black history in my closet, some way, shape, or form. So that's been really fun because it like gives me something to look forward to.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Something good on your end.
Well, I mean, on the same vein of Black History Month, Doechii took home 3 Grammys. I'm really loving her right now. Oh my God, she's amazing. So I'm so glad that she's being recognized and like she's just getting me through this week. So,
Yay!
but this is our first podcast.
Yay, the first podcast. I'm so proud of us.
I'm so proud of us too. And I'm so excited for you listeners out there to get to know us a little bit more, and hopefully you will want to tune in to us and all the amazing good stuff we're going to be getting into, the good trouble we're going to be getting into. So let's just jump right in, I think. So let's tell me about yourself, Amber. Who are you?
Okay. All right. So obviously my name's Amber. I am a Black mother, first and foremost. I also am a school leader. I worked in education for a long time and worked my way towards being a school leader at a really epic private school. And I don't know, like say I'm just like an overall badass because I'm ambitious. I go out and get it. I work hard, lots of degrees. So I'm like going to give myself some props. I'm also currently on a healing journey, trying to heal from childhood stuff, and just keeping my head above water in this like crazy upside down world that we live in, and like try to find just joy in everyday experiences and life and not let things weigh me down. Tell us about you, Miss Nikki.
So beautiful. Yeah, I'm Nikki. I'm the product of interracial love. I'm fierce in the pursuit of empowering and protecting my people through my Latina matriarchal lineage that I'm working through, and I work with my ancestors. I'm the DEI director that Fox News is trying to say is the devil. I've been realizing that I'm a living ancestor. It's something I've been thinking about a lot, is that I'm, I think sometimes we get caught up in the idea that we are our ancestors' wildest dreams, which is true. But I'm also trying to think about, well, what kind of like descendant am I? And like, how can I be a better ancestor for my lineage as, for the next 7 generations? It's always something I've admired about Indigenous people, and particularly the Lakota people. They believe in the next 7 generations, and every action you take will impact the next 7 generations. So right now I'm really focused on trying to be a better ancestor each day.
You are an excellent ancestor.
Thank you. So are you. You're an incredible ancestor. And I'm curious, what's been bringing you joy?
It's been bringing me joy. I guess the typical mom thing is definitely my kids bring me joy, but also like I work at a school. So like seeing students just love learning brings me joy. Music has been bringing me joy a lot lately. Like you mentioned earlier about Doechii, like just great music. I love listening to like just really simple songs and music. I love I keep listening to like Audra Day's like Rise Up song. It just like gives me life. And I don't know, I guess also I'm just like always saying like I'm an empath. So like I love talk about like people's experiences and stories. Like I like to take a deep dive and just like, truly sit down and listen to what people have to say. I love that. That brings me joy. It's bringing you joy, ma'am.
That's so beautiful.
My aggressive ma'am.
The aggressive ma'am, I love. That's so beautiful. What is bringing me joy? Being in community, I really intentionally tried to do that. And I would say that that's going well. I went out with my friends on Friday night, and we've been taking a salsa dancing class, which is just hilarious. Me and 2 of my coworkers. There's my dog. Okay, she's now. But we've been going to salsa dance class. But we've only gone once. They went twice. I went once. But we're going to continue to go every Thursday. And then last Friday, we went to like a salsa night they were doing in our town. And it was actually really cute. It was really fun. And that's been bringing me a lot of joy. I'm just kind of thinking of like how to have some fun, dance a little bit, and, grive with the music and talk about music. Oh my God, Bad Bunny's new album. It really bringing me joy.
It's like for the people.
Yes, it is. But yeah, so let's just jump right in. Like, how should we start? Should we just talk about why we're doing this podcast? What do you think?
Let's let our listeners kind of understand the background to this. I think it's also helpful to know how we know each other. We actually used to work together And we did some really amazing things together at our school when you were here. But I live in Colorado and Nikki lives in New York. So we are long distance podcasting, which is really exciting. And we are doing this podcast because, like I mentioned several times already, like I'm a mother, but I also have biracial children and I'm married to a white male. And as an educator, I just thought it would be really cool to like collect and share stories of others in similar or not similar situations. I think it's important for everybody to like gain perspective of how others navigate the world so that we can be mindful. I think of that quote where it's like, you never know what somebody else is battling or going through. So like always be kind. And so it's like helpful to know that like everybody has like all these different types of identities, but they also have all this that they bring, to environments and settings that they're in. And I think it's important for us to collect those stories and share those with the surrounding community for those who want to resonate with something, or people are like, hey, I didn't know that that's like how this person was living their life. So I just think it's cool. That's why we kind of like started talking about this idea from my personal experience and then your personal experiences as well.
Yeah, I love that. As you were talking, I was thinking about how we came up with the name The Mixtape as really like an homage to the fact that we're going to be honoring like both mixed people and mixed couple stories, but also like the story part of it. I was thinking about how like when I was younger and I would be driving in the car with my mom, or she would be driving, she'd always listen to Delilah on the radio. Do you know who I'm talking about? And she just had that smooth voice and she would tell stories in between each song. And so it's like, this is almost a way of doing that same thing. Like, our journeys are songs and like we're storytellers and we're telling the stories for the songs. And so it creates one big mixtape, which, awesome. And I think it would be an understatement to say that there's like a lot of biracial people in this world. I think, and I know that we're on the rise. And so as we continue to take up more and more space in society, it's so important that we just keep talking about what it means to be biracial. And I think shout out to my parents, but like if they had done some work in what it meant to be in an interracial relationship, I think we probably would have had less racial trauma. I see it in that way as like, it's really important that we just continue to tell our stories because our stories are important and we can influence people's perspectives of themselves and also the world around them. So, we're not the minority, like we're the majority. So let's talk about it.
That's right. Let's talk about it for real.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So I guess we talked about like what we hope to discuss as far as for like capturing perspectives. I really truly hope that we can discuss like love and pain and triumph and racial identity, racial trauma, as you mentioned. I think that, looking back to like, I'm on this healing journey, like I want stories to heal others. I think something that's healing and just hearing a shared experience is like, like it helps you like, oh wow, like I'm not the only one that went through this, experience. Here's somebody who like overcame this, or here's somebody who, like has these identity issues or crises sometimes. And like, how did they overcome that? Like, that's inspiring to me. Hey, I went through this and I have some ideas. So like, we are inviting our listeners to like interact with us as much as possible about your identity, about your story. We want you on our show, and we'll talk about more of that at the end. But I think that's what we're hoping to discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're super curious to know if you identify with either being a multiracial or biracial person, or if you are in an interracial relationship. We'd love to know that. So drop us a comment, drop us a line. Maybe our lingo isn't accurate. I'm not sure if we're new, but leave us a comment if that's you, because we definitely want to hear from you in part of collecting our stories. And being able to walk in multiple worlds and cultures is such a gift and a blessing. It's not a curse. And so we don't want, like you said, like we don't want people to feel like they're alone. Like there's so many people that experience the things we experience. Like, let's talk about it. Let's be real about it. So, and that's something I've always appreciated about our friendship is like just the level of realness we have with each other, and like being able to like drop the mask and be ourselves with each other. It's really cool.
Yeah, I agree. I love this. So yeah. Do you want to get into talking about like our first episode, who like as far as for just interracial marriage and dating and couples is kind of like inspired by the loving. Like this wouldn't necessarily be the product of interracial love as, as common as it is now if it wasn't for the loving.
Yeah. And you know what's so crazy is it's like one of the worst story. It's my favorite story to share in these spaces because I think there's a lot that can be gained from it, but it was pretty traumatic as a kid. But I was in high school, so I went to a very white school. Like everyone was white. And like, even though I could pass for white, like I wasn't seen like that there. So
Yeah.
in class one day, there was this girl and we were watching the movie 12 Years a Slave. This was like an English class. I don't even know why we were watching it in English class. It wasn't history, but besides the point. We were watching 12 Years a Slave. And this girl, my classmate, she interrupted she was like, pause. And she raised her hand and she asked the teacher, like, hey, like, would Nikki have been a slave? And the teacher looked at me and was like, I don't know, like, what would you say? And all I could think about in that moment was, I wouldn't be alive. And it's like, I don't know why I said that, but I think like there's so much to unpack there. Okay.
Yeah.
But the point I'm trying to make in this moment is that I think my mind as a kid, it's like I knew my parents were different races. And I was thinking about the fact that like, how would my mom, whose family is from the Dominican Republic, they wouldn't have even been there in the United States to be able to meet my dad and then create me. That's where my mind went in that moment. So it's interesting because there is such a rich history of like interracial relationships in the United States. So I just think that story is just like an example of how that feels when you're like trying to evaluate your place in history of like, well, maybe I wouldn't have even been here. Like, who knows? Because
that's a good point. Yeah, that's 100% a good point. As far as for like not proud of the history, but we can definitely like take out like, and I want to watch like how I say this. I don't necessarily want to say like a silver lining, but like if this person wasn't here at this place in time, like this have all happened kind of situation. That's how I'm kind of looking at it. But obviously there's so much like deep rooted stuff behind the reason why they, like were already outlawing interracial relationships because, it was one thing for like, I'm gonna go back into the history of like America, like for slave owners to like, their children with their slaves. That was okay, so to speak. But I feel like two people just wanting to like love each other despite their race, like I just think that government or anyone having to say something about that is ridiculous to me. Like, who are we to tell somebody who to love regardless? So, and I love that their name just happens to be the Lovings.
Yeah, so onto the Lovings. I get to derail this a little bit, but onto the Lovings. And something that's interesting also is that one of my ex-boyfriend's like grandparents were an interracial marriage. She was from Japan and he was from the United States. And they actually got married like right after the Loving case passed in Virginia, which is interesting.
Oh, nice.
So I always remember that tidbit, but I printed some facts here about the case. So I will be reading of the fact sheet here, but with my historian hat on, let's talk about Loving versus Virginia. So it was a Supreme Court case that happened in 1967. And Richard and Mildred Loving, they're a couple, they get married in Washington, D.C. in 1958. Richard was white and Mildred was black, but actually in doing some further research, it seems like she might have been of indigenous heritage, but I don't know enough on that to fully explain, but most of the sources I had seen about her stated that she was black, but then I guess she came out later in life and said she wasn't, and she identified more as being Native. Regardless, she was a woman of color. They were from Virginia, where interracial marriage was illegal at the time. And when they moved back home, they were arrested for violating the state's what they call anti-miscegenation laws. I think I said that right. Which is the law that prevents people from getting married if they're different races. So they take their case all the way to the Supreme Court, and they argue that their rights under the 14th Amendment, which is the right to due process and equal protection, was being violated. Surprisingly, in a unanimous decision, on June 12, 1967, the court sided with the Lovings, striking down the racist marriage laws. The court basically said that marriage is a fundamental right, and the banning of interracial marriage violated the Constitution. This ruling was huge because not only did it make interracial marriage legal nationwide, but it also marked a big step forward in the civil rights movement. And so that's the case itself. I kind of went on like a deep dive of trying to figure out the statistics about how many people are in interracial marriages today. So I was really curious about that. I have a question for you, Amber, some trivia, or like you could take a guess. Which racial group do you think is most likely to marry outside of their race?
Like today, I would probably say Black women.
Ooh, that's a good guess. And we will talk about Black women, of course, but it's actually false. The largest group are non-Hispanic white people who marry Hispanic people. And the language is tricky. Like the census is like just now starting to consider Latino and Hispanic a race. So there's this conversation about non-white versus white Hispanic, but it looks like what I did find is that there's 7 types of interracial marriage combinations that make up 95% of the couples that are in the census data that I've looked up to the census. The largest group, like I said, are non-Hispanic whites who are married to Hispanic people, which increased 43% since the year 2000.
Interesting.
Is more common among those with higher education, especially for Hispanics. Also, why are we using the word Hispanics? I use Latina, but, I also use Latino. I think Latino is a gender-neutral term. 46% of college-educated Latina people are Latinos intermarry compared to 16% with less education. So the more educated someone who's Latino is, the more likely they are to marry a white person.
Interesting. That's interesting.
Brings me back to like all the J-Lo movies I watched when I was younger. Like she's always with a white man. I loved those movies when I was a kid.
She stayed with the rich, white guy or like, she totally did. Little Ginny from the block. Not really from the block.
My God. Yeah. But according to, I got more statistics for you because,
okay, let's go.
Right, head on. According to Pew Research, Asian and Latino newlyweds are far more likely to intermarry in the U.S. And then out of those races, 3 out of 10 Asian Americans married someone of a different race in 2015. So again, interestingly enough, it seems like there's a lot more interracial relationships happening in the Asian community and the Latino community. There's some interesting statistics regarding gender differences within the Black community. And we were talking about that earlier. You mentioned you thought it could be Black women who are marrying white men. That could be the biggest group. And according to Pew Research, 24% of recently married Black men have a spouse of a different race. And 12% of recently married Black women have a spouse of a different race. So we're actually more likely to see Black men engaging in interracial marriage than Black women. Just interesting.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Just referencing to or fast forwarding a little bit to our next section. When I would grow up, I would always just see if I saw interracial couples, it was always a Black man with a woman outside of his race. That was the norm. I rarely ever saw Black women outside of their race. And so I always thought that was really fascinating. So whenever I remember I had a babysitter who, she was an older woman, she was an adult, but she started dating a white male and they got married. And I was like, that can happen, I was a kid, I was 12 or 13. And I was just okay, cool. And then I had an aunt who, she would always tell me stories about guys that she would date because she traveled a lot in her 30s and 40s, and she'd always be like, he was a white man, she would, or he was an Italian, or she would have all these experiences, and I was just always I loved how open-minded she was to date
and I feel the same way. I feel like I've always seen, especially in pop culture, I've seen a lot more Black men with white women than the opposite. But and then of course we're talking in a binary here. We're literally talking about Black and white. We're not even including all the other components of that and skin tone and ethnicity and other races. So the data is not completely accurate. But I also thought it was interesting and not surprising that people who live in metropolitan areas, 18%, are more likely to intermarry than those in non-metropolitan areas. And then another thing that I thought, and this is my last fact because I'm just spitting facts for no reason, is that Democrats and independents are 50% more likely to support interracial marriage than Republicans. Republicans are 28% likely, according to this data, through the messenger.
Hey, Republicans, let us know. Tell us if it's different.
Yeah, please, because we wouldn't know. We wouldn't know. So please,
we don't
know. But yeah, so I'm curious from you, what, did you hear about this case growing up?
I heard about it growing up. I remember watching a document or a movie, they reenacted the story. And I just remember being wow, I didn't realize it was illegal. I get people didn't accept it, but I didn't realize there was an awful law against it. And I remember in the movie, they had just gotten married and they were sleeping in their bed at their home. And the police broke into their house and arrested them, right then and there. Wow, on your wedding night, or at least a day or two after you got married, that has to be heartbreaking. That's trauma.
Traumatic.
It's straight up race trauma right there. So I remember that movie just had such an impact on me when I watched it. And I've seen stories and I've read about them, and I know that we celebrate Loving Day in June, but I don't know, I always associate them with Valentine's Day as well because, it's love. It just overcame like so much, and they fought the Supreme Court to be like, no, we have a right to be married. And I just always respected that of like the fact that they were just like, no, we're going to fight. We're going to push back because we love each other. And that was beautiful.
Yeah. And how cute is it that their name was Loving?
Like literally the perfect name for them. That's really good.
Right. Wow. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that with me. I wonder if that parallels the true story, if they came into their house and
I mean, I think that's like their version of what happened, like that they were able to tell their story, and then they made movies after. There's a few movies that they made, about the Lovings, and I know that they have children, so I'm sure like grandchildren are around these days. So if anybody happens to know the Loving family and knows if they want to come on here and talk to us about their story, like the descendants of the Lovings, we would be so honored.
Yeah, please.
We totally respect their life and their story, and just, they're inspirational just for the fact that they fought for their love. So speaking of interracial relationships, you mentioned like the percentage increase in like 2000. And so I was like, so fun fact, I graduated high school in 2001. Hey. So there's my age. But I was, in history class, and I did a little project, and I kind of wanted to give a little background before I share this. So I grew up in Aurora, Colorado. I grew up in like predominantly white school, and I learned very quickly that being a dark-skinned Black girl was not it. It was just like not it. At least that's how it was like portrayed to me. Even when I attended schools with like a little bit more diversity, I still knew that like I wasn't the preferred choice, specifically or especially around among Black boys. Like they wanted, biracial girl, light-skinned, girls, as we would say, or, white girls, white women. And I just felt so like, okay, rejected and dejected. And that was okay because like my mom did like make sure that we knew who we were and like to be proud of our skin color and like all of that. So I definitely wasn't like ashamed of who I was. It was just more like, I'm just not your cup of tea, and that's okay. It hurts, as somebody who's like growing up in adolescence and wants to like date and like, like people and have crushes. But yeah, the boys that I ended up like actually liking and liking me back happened to be white guys. So my first like real boyfriend was white. And I just truly felt like he liked me or actually loved me for me. We met when we were like 15 years old, and I just truly felt like he didn't, I don't know, we just never made it about like race, like I'm a Black girl, you're a white boy. It was just like, we just liked each other. We just vibed, and I don't know, it was cool. Anyway, so when I was a senior in high school, when I was still with this person, I had to do a project in health class called a sexuality scrapbook. And there was like sections of the scrapbook that we had to do, like, like who's our family and who are our friends, and then like kind of write about them. Like we had to put pictures, and then we had to write about like what was important about that, why these people are friends. And then like something that we had to do in the section would write something that we feel really strongly about, or like that we really believe in. And I wrote about interracial relationships. And this was 23 years ago. I still have the essay. I still have the scrapbook. Right here. Sexuality scrapbook. It's old. It's all beat up, but I want to read it. I thought it'd be fitting for our first podcast because this was when I wrote this essay, it was very rebellious of me. My parents did not approve of me dating outside of my race. And my mom definitely did not approve of my relationship with, my boyfriend at the time. So me writing this essay, I remember even writing it like, I did like most of my work for my project at like home, but when I wrote the essay, I actually remember typing it up at school and printing it off and then adding it to my scrapbook so my mom wouldn't see it. So like I said, this is rebellious of me. Like she doesn't, it's like a whole separate part of my like scrapbook of my pictures, have my family, and I typed up all these like little things about everybody. I did all of that at home, but I did my interracial relationship essay at school. Okay, so go ahead.
No, I was going to ask, you think it was like a shame thing? Like
100%. Yes, it was a shame thing. My mom didn't like outright say like, I don't like that you're dating, this person, or that, it was just like, she made me just uncomfortable about it to the point where I broke up with him because I just felt like she didn't accept it. And I don't know, I always like regretted that, breaking up with him because of my mom. So yeah, here's what it is now. Okay, so I'm going to pull it out. Let's see. I got a A on this project, by the way.
with the A.
Okay, so I'm going to read this. Once again, I haven't read this in a very long time. So this is my like real reaction to what I wrote. And y'all remember I was only 17. Wait, what were you saying, Nikki? I'm sorry. I totally.
I was just encouraging. I said, you got it.
All right. When it comes to relationships, I believe that it shouldn't matter what race or religion either person is, as long as they respect one another and are truly happy. That's when I feel a relationship can be successful. I also believe that interracial relationships are a good thing to see. I like the fact that two people from different backgrounds, cultures, and upbringings can find things in common and get together. They also seem to look past the fact that they're different in quite a few ways, and that's also a beautiful thing to see. As a Black girl who was attracted to mostly white guys, dating and relationships can be pretty difficult. In high school, I noticed that a lot of guys didn't feel comfortable dating Black girls. They might feel pressure from family or friends to date within their race. High school students care a lot about what people think, about what people that are close to them think, especially their friends. My family and friends, my friends don't seem to mind, but my family does. Some do joke and tease me a little bit, and strangers are who really affect my feelings. Since I have chosen to date boys outside of my race, I have had to deal with stares, dirty looks, and even comments under their breath. Most of the time, I just ignore it because I don't want the guy I'm with to feel uncomfortable if I get upset. Sometimes I feel like they just wouldn't understand, even though some of the stares are meant for them also. Deep down inside, it really hurts, and I ask myself, why don't I just stick with my own race permanently? I think I'm more attracted to white guys because I've grown up around mostly white people. And don't get me wrong, I like Black guys, but I also like white guys right now. As a teen, I'm exploring my taste, I put quotes around it, or rather, my type of guy that I want. I don't just go for any guy. Y'all, this is like, okay, as most of my friends know, y'all, I was 17. I like white guys who act Black. So maybe in a way, I'm attracted to the Black attitude and style. All in all, I think that this is good as long as I'm happy. It doesn't really matter what his race is. As long as he treats me with respect and makes me feel safe. I feel that teenage sex is a very opinionated subject, especially when teenagers are discussing it. I honestly think some of us don't even know what we're doing. However, I also think that teenagers can be in love, or at least really feel and think about who they are. Most adults would agree that you should have sex if you know you're in love. Well, why can't teenagers be in love? I mean, get off a high school sweetheart. There are quite a few irresponsible teenagers who are infatuated and end up dealing with the consequences of sex just because they didn't think, or rather, because they were in love. The irresponsible ones are contributing to the spread of statistics of STDs and teenage pregnancies, and not all of us are irresponsible. Roasted folks who can handle sex by being safe or even abstain. I truly believe that if deep down inside, I care about a person and I know that he feels the same, then I don't want premarital sex I don't think premarital sex or teenage sex is wrong. I know that I should be able to handle sex and protect myself no matter what. It is not only my responsibility, it's knowledge of knowing what's out there. And the responsibility comes rewards, and with irresponsibility comes says. Don't know why. This was also a health class. I was saying in my essay, but this is a health class activity, so I probably had to throw in like something about premarital sex. I was like, what did I write that for? I was thinking that as you were reading, I was like, okay, and good to know where you stand up for marital and teenage sex. The chapter was called Belief.
Thank you so much for sharing that with me and with our listeners. How did it feel to read that?
A little cringy. It's a little uncomfortable. And also, at the same time, I kind of appreciated how far I've come, like looking back, that the whole comment about like white guys who act Black, like I know that even in my childhood, I did not appreciate people said I acted white. So I think to put people in that category was like very like naive of me.
Yeah.
And I definitely don't like those kind of guys. So I don't know. I mean, I like people who they are for themselves, who know who they are, not somebody who has to act like a certain way, whether it's, trying to like copy like my culture or my style or anything like that. Like, I just like people who know who they are. And I'm married, so I love my husband because he truly knows who he is and he's good and confident with who he is. He doesn't have to pretend like he's somebody else.
That's so beautiful. You said something that stuck out to me when you were reading, which is like about getting stares and how like you feel like the white boys didn't realize that the stares were at them too. And I find that to be really interesting, and that resonated with me. But I feel like it's so beautiful that you were able to reflect in that way at such a young age. Like, you were like, listen, like, I just like white guys, and it's fucked up that everyone thinks I should. And like, and that's so valid. Like, and you were just a baby.
What? I'm a baby.
And isn't it crazy that 24 years later, like, we still are having this discussion? Like, it's just so interesting. But, I remember my dad sharing a lot of stories about my mom and how, like, so he grew up in a very, like, rural, white, like, conservative, like, MAGA area of upstate New York, and always, like, shared that it was, like, kind of a big deal, like, when he brought my mom home, because, like, there were no people of color in this area, and, like, people just definitely gave looks and stares, and, like, didn't really understand him, and, like, he also, like, I would say, has a preference for women of color in general, which I have thoughts on because he's a white man.
Yeah.
But regardless, like, so much of just that you saying that about, like, I don't know if he realizes that the stairs are for him too. Like, I feel like that's something that you don't realize until you have children. And I don't know if your husband has that experience, but
I do think that he does have that experience of, he knows, like, we still get people looking at us crazy at the grocery store, but he sees it too. And I think that, obviously when I was with my boyfriend when I was like 16, 17 years old, he didn't realize that was a thing. And I get that. And that's fine. I think that comes with age too. Not necessarily like just with having children, but I think it comes with like age and experience. But like, I will say to my husband sometimes, like, "Do you see that lady looked at us?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I saw that." Like, so I don't know. I think you still get the stares. They don't bother me as much as they did when I wrote this essay, because I really don't care. At the end of the day, people can look all they want. Most of the time, I just tell myself, like, I try to tell myself, like, oh, they're just looking at us because we are a gorgeous couple.
And you are.
So be a hater. I don't care.
What do you think, like, besides the obvious things, like your maturity and your experience, like, what do you think is different? Why doesn't it bother you as much now?
Because I just know that that's always going to be the thing. Like, there's always going to be somebody who doesn't approve of however somebody's living their life. I mean, anyone who doesn't fit like the norm is always going to get looks, So I guess it doesn't bother me. I'm comfortable with who I chose to be with. I'm proud of it. So I guess that's maybe why it doesn't bother me either. I think I see it more too, if that helps. So like when I see like a Black woman with a white male, or they look like similar to us, or I just see a Black woman like just with somebody outside of her race, I'm always just like, okay, sis, I see you. Like, I get it. I'm glad. I hope he treats you well. So like, I just want to I go out of my way to like smile at interracial couples, because I'm like, people were smiling at me when I was trying to do this, and it was like not normal. So I'm gonna make sure I smile at anyone I see in general, but like, I'm gonna make sure like they see, like, I'm like, I got you. I see you.
Yeah. That recognition, that acknowledgement of like, I see you.
Yeah. And I'm not like necessarily like uplifting just those types of couples. I love love. So tell me your love story. I want to hear it. You know what I mean? I love love. I like people who just look good together. If I see a beautiful couple, I see a beautiful couple. They could be any race, any gender. If you're beautiful, I'm going to recognize that.
That's so sweet. That's something I love about you. It's interesting because this feels so timely. I was dating this guy, and he's Black. He's fully Black, and he's darker skinned. And we were talking the other day, and I was like, "What's your type? Like, what is your type?" And he was like, "Well, I like light-skinned women." And I made a little joke with him. I was like, "Oh, you're racist." Because there's something about that irks me. And I'm not Black, and like, I can't speak for anyone, but it's just, if you're telling me you don't like dark-skinned women, I've got a problem already. Like, I'm already uncomfortable, right? So I was like, okay, like, I clocked it, but I didn't really say or do much. And then, yesterday we were talking again, and he was like, at the end of the day, like, I couldn't see myself like marrying anyone who wasn't a Black woman. And I was just like, why am I here? Why am I sitting here in front of you? In some ways, I really get it. I think the colorism thing threw me off. Like, let's take that out of the equation, because I'm not making excuses for him, right? But in terms of like this man who's a Black man wanting to end up with a Black woman, I get that. Like, I totally understand that. I think that's totally valid, and I'm not judging him for that. But like, why'd you like me on Bumble? Why did we go on like 4 dates? Like, what's that about? And so it even makes me wonder, like, was there an outside influence? Like, what was the reason that he decided to say that? Or like maybe he knew going in, but then why didn't he tell me? And so it's just so interesting. It's such a timely, like it still is happening, right? The conversation's still continuing.
Mhm.
And I don't want to discredit like his genuine want for a partner who is the same race as him. Like, I don't want to discredit that. I think that that's valid. But what, like, like it's just so, maybe I ramble too much in that story, but I just think it's relevant. Like,
No, I agree. I do think it's relevant because I think that that comes up a lot in dating. And I think that it would have been fair for him to give you a heads up of like, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I'm hoping for. Because I feel like anytime that you're dating these days, or I mean, I'm not dating, but like, I feel like you are out there to like find your person. Right. And like anything else is kind of like wasting time. So if he knew that he wasn't trying to be with like anybody outside of his race, like, why are you entertaining this person then? Like, you're wasting her time. Like, you wasted your time. You know what I mean?
yes. And like, it's so interesting to think about too. Like, if a white man said, like if a white man was like, at the end of the day, like, I just have to marry a white woman, that would piss me the fuck off. Like, I would not have the same chill reaction to that. Like, I'd be like, it's racism. And so it's like, there's just so much nuance to it and like different dynamics and like,
well, let's unpack that really quick, because why would you reverse that? Because I feel like if I was in your shoes as a Black woman and this white man like was entertaining me, and like reached out to me, dating side and like connected with me and like dating me, and then like, oh, I really want to marry like a white woman, I would be like, do you know this? Did you check with your moral reasoning? Like, and I wouldn't necessarily think it was racist. I would just be like, how you feel right now? Why did you entertain me? What was the purpose of all of that? Because if I went out and said, like, I only see myself marrying a Black man, why am I entertaining? Why would I entertain any other race? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I do. I do. And maybe it's just because of I'm a DEI director, so I'm like racist versus like, just me as a person that could see that being a problem too.
So I was just wondering why you thought like it would be a different, if it was like, if a Black man is saying it, it's okay. And I'm not saying that like if a white man said it would be racist, it would just be like, either way, why are you wasting this person's time?
Yeah.
And like, you clearly know what you wanted going into this, so you should have just not even entertained it.
And it's crazy how much race has came up in my relationships, because and I think that that's like very much a pillar of the biracial experience or the multiracial experience, because it's like almost like an elephant in the room. Like, and I've dated men of all different races. Like, I don't necessarily have a racial preference when it comes to dating, but when I remember in one of my relationships with a white man, always kind of feeling like he didn't really get me to the full extent, and he didn't really understand parts of me, especially cultural parts of me, and having an attachment to a culture. And when I got with another ex-partner who was fully Latino, he's Mexican American, I was like, oh my God, yes, like, he's going to get me. It's going to be awesome. Like, we're going to do all these things together. Like, he's going to understand me. And it quickly became that I wasn't brown enough. I wasn't brown enough to be accepted by him. It was always like, well, you're just a white girl at the end of the day, and like, you don't understand. But then, when I would turn around to the ex who was white, I was this brown girl.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, am I? What do you want from me?
It's not fair. I think that that's probably like an experience that a lot of like multiracial, people experience. Is like, where do I fit? I'm not white enough over here. I'm not brown enough or Black enough over here. And it's like, do they fit in? I couldn't even like begin to imagine.
What would you tell your, like, the baby Amber who wrote that essay? Like, what would you tell her today if she was sitting in front of you?
I would say focus more on what you want, like what do you like about a person, instead of like what type of person they are. Is like, how I said, like the whole white guys that act Black, but like I really should have said like a guy that would truly understand like my experience through life and how I'm going to navigate the world as a Black woman, and having work experience at that time, like, legit career experience. Someone that I could come, like think about like someone you can come home to and be like, oh my gosh, like, let me tell you what happened at work because I'm a Black person, and like somebody that would really be like, yeah, that's messed up. Like, I get that. Or I think I would have probably told little of me, like, I still believe and agree that it's, what I wrote about as far as for like finding someone that like truly likes you for you, and not like, oh, I just want this opportunity to be with someone because they're different or something I've never experienced. Like I've heard so many stories of like women who are like Black women who have been with like somebody outside the race. I'm like, I've never been with a Black before. And it's like, well, hold on. Like this is not like a experience. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So like not somebody that's gonna like fantasize you is important. I think advice for my little self, like, oh, and I had experiences that weren't positive with both white and Black men. I think it's just really important. Like, I would tell myself like to focus on respecting myself, first, and not just trying to like get with somebody because they look cute, or they have like a style that I like.
Yeah. How did you know that Daryl was your person?
And liked how easy it was to talk to him. And I liked how thoughtful and considerate he was about like everything that I would share. It felt like he really truly like listened and valued who I was. He's also like really like handy with like everything. Like he's just multi-talented. I knew that he had been around a lot of different types of people. I also respected that. He never came off as like closed-minded to me, which I appreciated. And so I don't know, and we just like really vibed right away, like from the beginning, and we clicked. And like I said, he was easy to talk to. He wasn't like, how like you get those cheesy text messages when you like start dating somebody, like, good morning, have a good day. Those text messages. It was like so much more thoughtful. Like, hey, like I remember you have like a meeting today, or like a presentation that you were nervous about. Like, good luck with that. Like, he would just like respond to things or find things to, say that like showed that he listened to something I said like maybe a week ago, or a month ago. Yeah. And also I knew my mom would meet our match. But maybe, I don't know, I felt safe with him. And there was also this part of me that when we like really got together, that I was like, I could be like totally okay with this being like my family, like that's it, and like obviously we have kids, but like I met like my mom, my dad, like my siblings, like I was okay with like I could just be this person.
Yeah.
And like all that other stuff doesn't matter. It was just bonus. And yeah, he's just so safe.
So beautiful. I wish little you could meet you now. And me too. I wonder, she'd be mortified probably to know that we were like talking about her thoughts on premarital sex.
I was like, should I even read this part? But like, I'm reading the essay. I wrote it. I'm reading it. I don't even know why I was even writing about that. But like I said, health class, I probably had to plug something in about sexuality and sex. I don't know. I got it. My teacher wrote good job on the paper. So I guess good job. Just good job. Yeah. That's me. I think he didn't write anything else. I wrote some poems. He said, my poster that I wrote about domestic violence. I made a poster that says love shouldn't hurt. And he said, awesome one.
Okay.
Apparently my poster was better than my cringy essay. So.
Oh my gosh. I wonder what that conversation was like with his like family at home. Like, was he like, this student was writing all about how she wants to have premarital sex
and date white boys. No, I remember, I think when I was even in that health class, I had a really good friend who was a white guy. And he was in that class with me. So I don't know. He probably has something to do with what I wrote too. But yeah.
But wow, what a cool story. As we like move towards closing out, what are some like intentions we have? I was gonna pull out a card, but I didn't bring my card deck into the office. For the listeners out there, Amber and I love tarot. We are tarot girls, and I was gonna pull a card, but I didn't. So I'm curious, like, how do we close with an intention?
Okay. I would like to say our intention for the podcast, I got close to my mic, would be to continue to find joy in our time together while we record our podcast. This has been like so fun, just laughing together and like sharing like ideas and facts. And I hope that we can reach, my intention is that we reach several listeners who just want to vibe and connect with us too. That's fine.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah, I think mine is the same, like just to provide affirmation and support and love and laughter. And like we can all just be real and giggle together and talk about serious things, but in a lighthearted and loving way. So we're going to have some guests on. We're really excited about it. Amber and I have worked so hard to create a list of wonderful people. A lot of them are people that we know and love who will be joining the podcast. And if you know anyone, we'll drop a link in the description for a quick Google form to gather their contact information. But we're totally open. We want to hear people's stories involving, we are the Mixed Tape podcast. So, we want to feature stories of mixed people or mixed relationships. And we have an Instagram.
We do. We have an Instagram officially. We have 2 followers.
Wait, that's amazing. 2 followers is huge.
It's called the Mixtapes Pod. That's our handle on Instagram. And we also have a YouTube channel, which will be uploading this lovely session on. It's also called Mixtapes Pod. And that's also our email address. So you can't forget it because it's easy to remember. And it's all different ways that we are saying that we're the Mixtapes Pod. So yeah, definitely reach out to us. Check us out on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram because we need more than 2 followers. Got a relative. I'll say it again.
I was just going to say I'm going to have to create a fake Instagram to follow us.
Girl, right? Because we need some followers. We need to get our word out there. I think this is important. I think anything around racial identity is important in the world that we live in because I think that it's important to just continue to be like, no, we're here. This is my identity. This is how I'm navigating the world. This is how I'm contributing. This is how I'm, just living my life. And let's share those stories.
Amen. Amen to that. Well, listeners at home, we love you.